Welcome to News Nexus. Today, we're diving into one of the most destructive and terrifying forces in economics, hyperinflation. It's not just about prices going up. Hyperinflation is a complete collapse of trust in money itself. Entire nations have been brought to their knees, middle classes wiped out, and life savings that took decades to build have vanished overnight. In this program, we'll journey through the worst hyperinflation disasters of modern history. Germany's Weimar Republic after World War I, Zimbabwe and Venezuela in our own century, and shocking examples in Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Greece. These aren't just numbers on a chart. They are human stories of survival, despair, and resilience. So settle in, because for the next 25 minutes, we'll uncover how hyperinflation happens, why it's so devastating, and what lessons it leaves behind. Let's start with the basics. Inflation is normal. In fact, small price increases every year are part of most economies. But hyperinflation is when that system completely breaks down. Economists define it as prices rising by more than 50% in a single month. Imagine that. Something that costs $1 today could cost $1.50 next month, $2 the month after, and by year's end, it may be completely unaffordable. When hyperinflation takes hold, money stops functioning as money. People no longer trust it as a store of value. Instead, they rush to spend it immediately, because waiting even one more day could mean higher prices. In some cases, workers are paid multiple times a day, and they sprint to markets before their wages lose value. The most infamous case was Germany in the early 1920s. After World War I, Germany was saddled with enormous reparations, political unrest, and economic turmoil. To cover its bills, the government printed money, and then more money, and then even more. By 1923, the mark was worthless. Think of this. Before the war, $1 equaled about 4 German marks. By late 1923, $1 equaled 4 trillion marks. Prices doubled every few days. A loaf of bread that once cost a few marks now cost billions, then trillions. Families carried baskets, sometimes wheelbarrows, of cash to buy groceries. Children played with stacks of banknotes like toys because the paper had no value. The human toll was devastating. Families lost savings overnight. Middle-class households collapsed into poverty. People bartered with coal, furniture, even clothing just to survive. Beyond money, the humiliation scarred an entire generation. Many historians believe that this despair helped fuel the rise of Adolf Hitler, proving that hyperinflation doesn't just destroy economies. It can change the course of world history. Decades later, Zimbabwe experienced a nightmare of its own. In the 1990s and 2000s, land seizures and government corruption crippled farming and production. When money ran short, the government printed more. By 2008, inflation was doubling nearly every single day. The official rate? An unimaginable 90 billion trillion %. The central bank printed $100 trillion notes. Yet they barely bought a loaf of bread. People abandoned the currency altogether. They traded in US dollars, South African rand, or even bartered with chickens and bags of grain. Doctors, teachers, engineers, once respected professionals, suddenly couldn't afford food. Life savings were obliterated. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its currency, relying on foreign money instead. But trust was shattered, and recovery has been painfully slow. Venezuela tells a similar story, but with an oil twist. For decades, Venezuela was one of Latin America's richest countries, powered by its vast oil reserves. But when oil prices fell and mismanagement grew, the government turned to printing money. By 2018, inflation had surged over 1 million % in a single year. Paychecks became meaningless. Salaries couldn't buy food. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Supermarket shelves sat empty. Families waited in endless lines just to buy bread or rice, and millions fled the country in search of survival. The Bolivar collapsed, replaced informally by US dollars and even cryptocurrencies. What's striking is that Venezuela was not a poor nation. It was wealthy, modern, and resource-rich. But hyperinflation proved that when trust in money evaporates, wealth can vanish in an instant. Argentina, too, has wrestled with runaway inflation. In the late 1980s, years of debt and failed policies erupted into hyperinflation. By 1989, annual inflation topped 3,000%. Workers were paid in envelopes of cash, but by the time they reached stores, prices had already risen. Riots broke out in Buenos Aires. The middle class was crushed. The government tried everything. New currencies, pegs to the US dollar, but the scars remain. Even today, Argentina struggles with chronic inflation, a shadow of that traumatic era. Hungary holds the record for the worst hyperinflation ever recorded. After World War II, its economy was shattered. To pay for reconstruction, the government printed enormous amounts of money. By 1906, prices doubled every 15 hours. That's right, every 15 hours. The largest note was the 100 quintillion pengu, a number so absurd it's hard to imagine. People used the notes as wallpaper or burned them for heat. The currency was worthless. Hungary eventually introduced a new one, the forint, finally ending the madness. But it remains the most extreme example of hyperinflation in human history. Other nations suffered too. Greece, under Nazi occupation during World War II, saw its money collapse while famine gripped the country. Yugoslavia, in the 1990s, crippled by war and sanctions, experienced inflation rates of billions of percent each month. People survived through smuggling, foreign currencies, or barter. And even today, countries like Turkey, while not technically in hyperinflation, show how high inflation steadily eats away at confidence, savings, and stability. So why does hyperinflation happen? The causes repeat: war, political crisis, corruption, reckless money printing. Once people lose faith in money, no amount of paper can restore its value. Money isn't just paper, it's trust. And when trust is broken, everything falls apart. The lessons are clear. No country is immune. Even wealthy nations can collapse if governance fails. Strong, independent central banks are essential, resisting the temptation to finance governments through printing presses. And most of all, ordinary people pay the highest price. Hyperinflation wipes out savings, pensions, and dignity. It is one of the cruelest forms of economic disaster. From Germany to Zimbabwe, from Venezuela to Hungary, the truth is undeniable. A nation's currency is its lifeline. When it collapses, so too does the society built upon it. Thank you for watching News Nexus. If you found this deep dive into the world's worst hyperinflation disasters insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more explorations of global history, economics, and current events. Share your thoughts in the comments. Could hyperinflation strike again in today's world? And which of these stories shocked you the most? Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and thank you for joining us here at News Nexus.